At my brother's Stanford graduation, my parents smiled for the cameras, then disowned me in front of everyone. No warning, no name in the program. Just silence. But what they didn't know? I had already uncovered the forged documents, stolen inheritance, and lies they thought would stay buried. I'm Elena Tran. I turned 38 last month, and I guess I should have known better than to expect anything different. But I showed up anyway, to my younger brother's graduation at Stanford, dressed in a navy dress I'd pulled from the back of my closet, a little wrinkled but hopeful. The courtyard was buzzing with families taking pictures, hugging their kids, handing out flowers. The sun was bright, almost too bright, like the whole day had been staged for everyone else's pride but mine. I didn't have a program, no reserved seat, no name on the invitation list, not even a text from my parents, and yet I still walked across the lawn as if I belonged there. When I spotted my parents, Mireille in her pearl grey suit, and Thomas scanning his phone like he had better places to be, I felt my heart drop a little. My brother, Jonah, was radiant in his cap and gown, flanked by them like a centerpiece. I approached slowly. My mother looked at me as though she were trying to remember where we'd met. "Oh, Elena," she said, flat and sharp. "You came." "I saw the announcement online," I replied, trying not to let it sting. She gave a clipped smile. "That wasn't meant for everyone." No embrace, no warmth, just frost. Jonah leaned in for a hug, whispered, "I'm glad you're here." But his eyes flicked toward her, waiting for approval. A staff member handed me a plain badge. No family crest, no color, just guest in Times New Roman. I stared at it for a long second. I had helped design the Tran family crest 20 years ago. Now I wasn't even family, not officially, not today. I sat alone on the edge of the seating area, behind a row of proud parents and congratulatory bouquets, clutching that guest badge like it was some kind of label I had to explain. The Tran family section was cordoned off near the front, complete with name cards and silver-trimmed programs. I wasn't on the list, not even a placeholder. I stared at the laminated seating chart, searching for my name as if it might magically appear if I looked hard enough. But there it was. Thomas, Mireille, Jonah, plus 2 guests. No Elena, not even an initial. I stood frozen, like someone watching her name fade off a chalkboard. A few feet away, my mother smoothed her dress and adjusted her sunglasses, never once glancing my way. My father shook hands with a donor I vaguely recognized, probably from a gala years ago when I was still part of their talking points. I felt invisible. No, worse than that. I felt edited, like a character written out of a family script after serving her purpose. And the thing that hit the hardest wasn't the exclusion itself. It was how cleanly it had been executed. No fight, no confrontation, just silence. Polished and rehearsed. I remembered helping Mom choose fonts for those very programs when Jonah was in middle school. She'd said I had an eye for detail. I guess she meant it, just not enough to include me. The breeze shifted. A corner of a discarded program fluttered at my feet. I picked it up. Inside was a photo of Jonah with "The Pride of the Tran Family" in calligraphy beneath. No other siblings mentioned. No history acknowledged. I let the page fall from my hand. That was the moment I realized. They hadn't forgotten me. They had erased me. Back at my apartment that night, I couldn't sleep. The silence felt loud, like it was pressing against the walls. I sat on the floor with my laptop, surrounded by old files and coffee that had long gone cold. I didn't start with a plan. I just clicked. through emails, shared drives, old backups I'd kept from when I used to do part-time bookkeeping for the Tran Foundation. They'd never revoked my access. Typical. They erased me in public, but forgot I built half their systems. Most of it was mundane: donation receipts, meeting minutes, PR templates. But then I saw it. A folder labeled Holdings Updated. I clicked through and stopped at a PDF. Transfer authorization. Cannon Beach property. My heart dropped. The property, my grandfather's beach house, was in there. The one he'd promised me. The one I painted every summer in college, sanding porch rails while Dad grilled salmon on the deck. But the document listed a transfer. My name, typed above a signature that looked like mine, but wasn't. The S curved too flat, the Tran loop too wide. It was a forgery, and it had been notarized by Savannah Tran, my cousin. I pulled out an old lease agreement, compared the signatures side by side. Not even close. I sat back, chest tight. This wasn't just betrayal. It was fraud, theft, a crime dressed in family handwriting. My phone was cold in my hand as I called Aunt Valerie, the only one who ever listened. She picked up on the third ring. "Elena," her voice rasped. "You okay?" "No," I whispered. "They forged my name. They took the house." There was a long pause. Then her voice cracked. "Oh, I was afraid of that. I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know what to do." By morning, the anger had settled into something sharper. Resolve. I brewed a pot of coffee, opened every window in the apartment, and laid out everything I had across the kitchen island. Forged documents, email chains, old signature samples, the transfer file, and a printed copy of Granddad's original will. The light caught on the gold foil of a folder Mom had once given me when I was 12. It used to hold stationery. Now it held evidence. I reached out to Martin Hayes, a lawyer I'd met through a former non-profit colleague. He wasn't flashy, just meticulous, with a quiet kind of steel behind his voice. I told him everything, from the beach house transfer to the pattern of quiet erasure that had trailed me for years. He didn't flinch. "You're not the first person to be ghosted out of a legacy," he said, "but you might be the first who documented it this well." We met that afternoon in his downtown Oakland office. The walls smelled like paper and resolution. He walked me through my options: file a petition to contest the transfer, challenge the trust's administration, and gather corroboration for forgery. "It won't be fast," he said, "and it won't be gentle. But it'll be right." I nodded. I didn't need vengeance. I needed truth on record. "This isn't about burning down what they built," I told him. "It's about not letting them pretend I was never part of it." Martin smiled, just a little. "Then let's remind them who helped build the house." As I signed the first set of documents, my hand trembled. Not from fear, but from something that felt strangely like freedom. I wasn't just a name they tried to erase. I was the one holding the pen now. The news broke 3 weeks later, right as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. I hadn't even made it to my desk when my phone started vibrating non-stop. Calls, texts, email alerts piling on top of each other. I ignored most of them until I saw the subject line from an old colleague. "You might want to read this." I clicked the link. Front page of a non-profit watchdog site. "Luxury Legacy. Tran Foundation faces allegations of forgery, misappropriation." My throat went dry. The article didn't name me, but I didn't need to be named. It referenced board documents, internal emails, donor meeting transcripts, quotes I recognized word for word because I had printed them, cried over them, and quietly handed them to Martin in that quiet Oakland office. There was even a partial audio clip, One where my mother, during a pre-gala briefing, said, "We only use Jonah's face in marketing. Elena doesn't photograph well with the image we're presenting." Then my father chiming in, laughing. "She used to read everything." I still did. The internet moved quickly. Within hours, the Tran Foundation's gala was postponed. 3 major donors released public statements announcing their withdrawal. Social media swarmed with hashtags, Hajja erased by image, and Ichto transparency now. I didn't say a word. Not on Twitter, not to the press. I wasn't interested in dragging them through the mud. I just wanted the truth to breathe. Around lunchtime, a PR firm representing the foundation sent an email asking if I'd consider providing a unifying quote. My reply? Silence. Let them figure out how to unify a story that was never whole to begin with. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel petty. I felt seen, not by them, but by reality. And that, somehow, felt enough. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning at the Santa Clara County Superior Court. The room was plain, no mahogany walls or cinematic lighting, just tired benches, humming fluorescents, and a stale scent of old paperwork. But for me, it might as well have been a stage. I sat beside Martin at the petitioner's table, a folder of exhibits fanned in front of us like cards ready to be played. Across the aisle, my parents sat stiff and unreadable. Mireille wore her usual cream blazer and control. Thomas avoided my eyes. Jonah scrolled his phone like this was all just noise before lunch. When the judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and no time for nonsense, called us to order, Martin stood and began. "Your Honor, we are requesting Exhibits A through E be admitted into record." She nodded. He continued. Emails, voice recordings, property transfers, a notarized signature comparison, and finally, Exhibit D, Grandfather Lewis's original will. "This document predates the amended trust currently in use," Martin said. "It clearly designates Elena Tran as the primary beneficiary of the Cannon Beach estate." Silence. Then a shift. Jonah froze mid-scroll. My father's lips parted, but no sound followed. My mother's jaw flexed. "That version was never meant to be final," she finally said, tight. The judge didn't blink. "Intentions aren't law. Documents are." Martin didn't gloat. He just stepped back, calm and ready. The audio was played last. My mother's voice, sharp and familiar. "She doesn't fit the image." Then my father's chuckle. "She used to read everything." The courtroom stayed still. No outburst, just stillness. Then, a ruling. The property was returned to me. The trust was frozen pending investigation. And for the first time in years, I saw something real on my mother's face. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. I didn't celebrate with champagne or take a victory lap. Instead, I drove straight from the courthouse to Cannon Beach. The house looked smaller than I remembered, but the porch swing still creaked the same way in the wind. The cedar shingles were weathered, the paint on the railings chipped. But it was mine again. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I didn't want to sell it. I didn't want to live in it as a monument to everything I'd lost. I wanted it to become something that breathed. So I used part of the reinstated inheritance to renovate it, not into a vacation rental or a museum of family regret, but a writer's retreat for young women from the foster care system, women like me who'd once felt erased or displaced. I worked with a nonprofit I trusted, kept things small and intentional. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just warm wood floors, shelves of books, journals, soft lighting, and a kitchen that always had the smell of something comforting. I named it The House Between Lines, a quiet place for voices that had once been silenced. The first 2 residents moved in just before fall. I remember one girl, Maya, standing on the porch with her hands in the pockets of a sweatshirt, 2 sizes too big, whispering, "I've never had my own room before." I nodded and said, "Neither did I. Not really." I didn't tell her the whole story. She didn't need it. What she needed was space, safety, and to know someone once fought for the roof above her head. I sat on the same back deck my father once grilled salmon on and watched the sunset stretch across the sky. Not a monument. Not a trophy. Just peace. Something real. Something finally mine. A few weeks later, a cream-colored envelope arrived at my P.O. box. No return address. Just my name in a slanted, familiar handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I opened it slowly, half expecting a cease and desist, half expecting nothing at all. Inside was a single sheet of heavy paper. No apology paragraphs, no emotional outpouring, just 10 words, centered and precise. "You were right. I'm sorry it took this to see it." It was from Jonah. I stared at the letter for a long time, letting the silence around me fill in the blanks he didn't write. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to respond. I folded the page neatly and placed it in a small lockbox beneath my bed, next to the Tran family crest pin I'd been given when I was 15, the one I used to think would mean something one day. Neither held the same weight they used to, but I kept them. Not as keepsakes of pain, but as reminders, not of what I lost, but of what I survived. I didn't need their apology to heal. I had already started that process on my own. I stopped waiting for the people who hurt me to understand the damage. I stopped needing their acknowledgement to validate my story. I hadn't returned to any Tran Foundation events, hadn't spoken to my parents since the hearing, and I didn't plan to. My life had quietly rearranged itself into something simpler, something true. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch of the house between lines and hear laughter echoing from the kitchen, pots clanging, someone reading aloud from a dog-eared novel. I'd close my eyes and smile, knowing this place was never built to prove anything. It existed because I did. And that was enough. Forgiveness had found me, not through them, but through the life I chose to live without them. One quiet Saturday morning, I was sitting near the back of the reading room at the house between lines, sipping lukewarm coffee and listening as the girls took turns sharing their latest poems. The air smelled like cinnamon and fresh paper. The mismatched folding chairs creaked, someone's pencil kept tapping against a notebook, and Maya, always a little shy, was finally reading her work aloud without stumbling. I wasn't there to be the center of anything. I was just there, present. And that, to me, felt like belonging. Midway through the session, a little boy, probably the younger brother of one of our residents, wandered over to me, his sneakers squeaking across the floor. He held out a tiny, lopsided paper badge made from a cereal box and decorated with crayon and glue. "This is for you," he said, all gap-toothed grin and earnest eyes, "because you showed up." I blinked, caught completely off guard. "You made this?" I asked, kneeling to meet him at eye level. He nodded proudly. "It's a badge, like the kind grown-ups wear when they're important." My throat tightened. I smiled and pinned it to my sweater, right over my heart, right over the place where that cold guest badge had once sat at my brother's graduation. Except this one? This one was better. It was crooked and soft and made with love. And it was earned. I looked around the room at all the girls leaning forward to listen, to be heard, to be held in the space we had created together. I wasn't their leader. I was their witness. I didn't crave a seat at anyone else's table anymore. I had built my own. And now I got to choose who sat beside me. No legacy handed down, just one written slowly and honestly in real time. On my own terms. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't about pretending the hurt never happened. It's not about excusing the people who failed you or rewriting the past to make it softer. It's about letting go of the exhausting hope that one day they'll finally see you, finally understand. Some wounds don't close with time. Some just stop bleeding when you stop picking at them. I don't stand on stages. I don't give speeches. But I've lived long enough to know that healing doesn't always look like a grand gesture. Sometimes it's sitting in the back row of a room you helped build, listening to someone else find their voice. Sometimes it's choosing peace over proof. I used to think I needed to be invited, to be accepted, to be celebrated. But the truth is, belonging doesn't come from others. It comes from knowing who you are, even when they forget. Especially when they forget. So, if you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who are supposed to love you, hear me when I say this. You're not alone. Your story matters. You matter. You don't need permission to take up space. Build your own table. Fill it with people who see you, respect you, and choose you. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Have you ever had to walk away from the people you once called family? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, like share or follow. More stories like this are coming.